against the side of the treehouse, like a dog had gotten up there. We both froze, and it continued until it reached the entrance of the treehouse, when we heard something digging into the wood, like an animal scrabbling to get in. We both started screaming in terror, and eventually my dad showed up, but he acted like nothing was wrong. He just popped his head up into the treehouse and asked if we wanted sandwiches for lunch. I think I mentioned before how cute we were before we disappeared in August. It was kind of like that through the whole summer. Josh became increasingly more irritable and moody, and Taylor would space out, and not hear things right away. Pep became kind of skittish, and hung around me for comfort. At first, you might think this was just normal prepubescent stuff, but the change was so sudden and radical, that it stood out like a sore thumb. Pep's mom was even threatening to send her to a psychiatrist. We all started suffering from sleepless nights, and when we could sleep, we all had nightmares. I got to the point when I wasn't with my friends that I would just lay listlessly around the house. And I remember hearing this one song around then. Just this one little snippet, and it keeps playing on repeat in my head, like a little bit of carnival music. I almost think I heard it when we were out in the woods somewhere. Like I mentioned, I can't remember the day I disappeared entirely clearly, but I do remember snippets. One of the most disturbing things I remember is kneeling on my knees on a wide piece of stone bedrock, I think, with my hands up in front of me, holding something. I don't remember what this was. I also remember being gagged, I think, or something being forced into my mouth. But the first thing I do remember after these little splintery memories is waking up in a hospital room. It took me ages to be convinced that Pep, Josh, and Taylor were missing. After a while, people started saying they were dead, but I knew better. When we moved out, I still knew better. And I know better to this day. Which takes us to the present day. I am 25. I have my own place in town, but I frequently crash with my parents because I'm a giant pussy. As I type, I am in my old room in my parents' house. In fact. And I think the Willow Man is back. At some point, I'll come back and tell you all the other weird little things we found in the wood when I was younger. But I want to get what's happening to me now off my chest. It started a few months back, right before winter started. I was taking the four-wheeler out just for something to do. I have only a part-time job, so I have some free time, and just as I was about to start it when I saw something glinting just past the start of the woods. The woods, by now, have become something that is only vaguely frightening, like hearing something in an urban legend. But when I saw that little glinting like winking in the woods, I began to have a small panic attack. I couldn't identify why I was so scared, but I knew if I went and looked, I was going to find something I didn't want to. And yet, against my better judgment, I left the four-wheeler and went to the woods, and though it had been only about 100 feet from where I was standing, it seemed to take forever to get to where the woods began. It had been a pretty fresh, breezy day then, but the woods were still and calm, with almost no wind moving through. But then, the woods are always like that, and you can't judge what the weather is like when you're in them. They looked so much different from when I played in them when I was a kid. There's lots more undergrowth now behind my property, and it just seemed quieter. No birds, no squirrels, nothing. Just the sound of the wind. And where had the thing been that I'd seen flashing at me in the underbrush? I was torn between going farther in to investigate, and standing just where the woods began. Because I was terrified. But before I could decide to do either, the trees had moved a bit in the wind and the thing blazed up at me like a tiny beacon. It had startled me so much that I jumped back before I could see what it had been. I had stood frozen where I was before I bent down to check it out. It was just uncovered under a little pile of dead foliage and mallow. It was an X-Man trading card that kept catching the sun and reflecting back at me, the holographic kind that were popular back in the 90s. This one had Wolverine on it, thrusting his claws out at you. It had been Josh's. I tried rationalizing to myself, because the last place it had been was my tree house, and then in the watchtower in the woods, but I figured it could have just basically migrated like basically everything in the woods does. But it had been so shiny and untouched by the elements I knew this wasn't true. In the end, I couldn't pick it up. I felt like it was a trap, so I turned around and went back inside. When I checked back in the evening later that day to see if the card was still there, it had disappeared. I know I didn't imagine it, and it felt like a trap. It's in northern New York, but that's all I'm going to say. I've been finding different things on the edge of the woods since then, but I haven't gotten the balls to go in and check it out. When there was still no snow cover, I found an empty bottle of lemonade. The label was sun-bleached and faded, and something I remember from being a kid, a compass, something of Josh's that he had been exceedingly proud of. and we'd used to try to triangulate where the willow man would be, unsuccessfully, and a metal ball with tiny little dents in the surface like an animal had been chewing on it. The last one I have no idea what to make of, but it seems familiar to me somehow. I have no idea how these things keep coming back to me, but it's been frightening me, to say the least. I've been trying to ignore the edge of the woods lately, because the snow cover is gone again. But I'm afraid there's something there, waiting for me. I might take pictures of the wood when I head out to work, because I have to go shortly, so don't be distressed, guys. I will probably be gone until 6 or later my time, but I will come back and tell you more then. Back again, everyone. Sorry I came back and left so suddenly last night. Some weird shit happened to me. I was headed out my door for work, and I had my phone ready and aimed at the woods to take some pictures when I saw something flash past the viewfinder really fast. So my heart was in my mouth. It had appeared to be bipedal and human height or taller and woods colored, brown, but I told myself it was a deer. So I turned and walked down my driveway, and started down the street. Happily, the street leads me away from the woods, so when I walked through town to get to my job, I managed to shake off a good portion of my fear. When I finally got to the library, and was rounding the side of the building to use the back door, I stopped. The library is attached to the fire hall which, if you recall, is pressed flush to the woods. I remember looking into the woods, and seeing something. And the next thing I remember is kneeling on my knees, facing my own backyard at 5 o'clock in the evening. Once again, I didn't have any shoes. My feet were bare and my wrists had pieces of twine tied around them. I didn't have my phone, my personal effects, nothing. So I just kind of wandered into the house, which was warm but empty. I sat down at the kitchen table for I don't know how long before I started to crave some sort of human interaction and came on here just to know I wasn't the only person in the universe. Then I went to bed. My mom woke me up about 10ish asking me if I was okay, and that the library had been calling asking where I was because I didn't show up for work. I might have alarmed her a little bit, because we ended up going to the hospital again. I haven't been feeling really well since then. Everything hurts, and somehow I've got all these bruises on me.
I am gonna shit some bricks if Op doesn't get photos. Also, the more you talk the more it sounds fake. There's no way there's less than 50 people in your village.
I will. Keep your shirt on. Here's how where I live works. The township I live in incorporates about 3 or 4 villages altogether. So although I live in a town with around 1,000 people, I actually live in a tiny little hamlet with a cluster of houses. That's just how NNY works, folks. Guys, sorry I left and didn't return until now. I keep getting fucked with lately. I left work yesterday, and got waylaid by Josh's mom. I spent the entire day with her yesterday, and she doesn't have a computer. She was freaking out, for some reason, about wondering where Josh was, and if I'd seen him lately. It's been a long while, and she never started showing signs of crazy. I was hoping this was just some sort of minor break because of stress. To make her feel better, I spent the day and part of the night with her, too. About 3 in the morning, I woke up. I was sleeping in the living room, to hear taps on the patio door. Josh's family have this giant German Shepherd, and it's smart enough to claw at the door when it can see someone and wants in. So, half awake, I went to the door, only to find nothing on the other side of the glass. I kind of stood there stupidly for a while, staring into their backyard, before I saw something glinting in the yard. And then I realized something was staring back at me, or thought there was. There were these 2 little red lights, winking on and off in the mid-horizon. I tried figuring out if they were possibly cell towers, but then they moved off, to their side yard, and I tried convincing myself it was some sort of animal. I huddled back onto the couch. The dog had jumped up, so it had been inside the whole time, and tried getting back to sleep. I didn't mention what I saw to Josh's mom. The next morning, when I left, I saw there was a cowtooth, sitting on the porch railing. It had been another of Josh's keepsakes, something he'd picked up on a trip to a farm and school. So, I had woken up at about 5 or 5:30 this morning, and made my way home. I didn't bother with the cowtooth. It was still dark, so it was damned unnerving walking back to my house, but I made my way back unmolested, made my way quietly into the house and threw my ass into bed to try to get a little more sleep. And then, not too long ago, I was woken by this awful shrieking coming from somewhere behind my house. I woke up, sprinted to my parents' room where the best view of the backyard at, parents were already at work, and stared into the dark again. I didn't know whether or not to pass it off as animals, because I did hear something brush against the house, and then some low, annoying growling. but then nothing. It's just started getting a little lighter, so I think I may check outside and see if there's any carnage. To answer some things that were brought up, yeah, there was something up with Josh. He was kind of the leader of the merry band, and he was one of those kids that would grow up into one of those guys that naturally take charge of things. Also, yes, I am trying to protect my safety as well as yours. I've given you all the hints I feel comfortable giving you, but I will stress again. I live in upstate NY, on the lake. It's about 5 minutes walk from my house. I'm sorry if my story has holes in it. Though I really appreciate everyone coming to read and enjoy it, I didn't come here to make you believe it. I can only tell you what's been going on in my life and what's happened. I'm not going to remember everything clearly, partly because I'm human, and partly because my brain has been fucked with. Sorry guys, you were correct in thinking I had work. My family owns a farm that I work on when I'm not in regular work that pays me. In any case, I forgot entirely to share what else has been happening to me aside from my random blackouts, and visit to Josh's mother's house. Recently, I'll hear this one strain of music. I think I may have mentioned this before. It's like a little bit of carnival music, and then a little melody of bells. Our town has 2 churches, and one of them is still in use, and plays melodies every half hour. I recognize what that sounds like, but I'll only hear these different songs when I'm closer to the woods. In retrospect, I seem to remember. It's an unsettling sensation, as if something is trying to lure me into the woods. I had a scare around last April I forgot to mention as well. Remember how I told you I had been found barefoot? I discovered one of my old shoes, tied by one of the laces, and dangling from a lower branch as though someone had put it there for someone to claim. I recognized it, though. I had been wearing Converses that I had been extremely proud of, with a star emblazoned on the heel. I had been heading out from my parents' house to go back to my place, when I had seen it, and had approached to get a better look. The shoe was dangling about eye level to me, and everything about it screamed trap. I stood about 10 feet from it, examining it. It was battered and damaged from the elements, but I could still make out where blood had soaked into them. That was when I heard this enormous crashing slightly farther off in the woods, in a rather leisurely pace. Could it have been deer? Certainly. But I noped the fuck out of there anyway. My mind might have been playing tricks on me, but I swear that I could hear a booming coming back at me from the woods. Sorry guys, I've been kind of busy today to try to keep my mind off of it. I was working on our family's farm when I heard what sounded like Josh calling me in the woods. I didn't go, but I just kept staring, and there was that thing again. Next time I will take a tape recorder or a video camera so I can show you all. I have to get back to work for now, but I will update later.
Okay guys, this happened to me last night and I haven't been able to sleep since. I was hesitant to post about it on /x/ because I've been looking for some sort of explanation or something, trying to see what it was I saw outside now that it's light out, but I cannot, and it's scaring the shit out of me. I usually just frequent /b//moose/ and /lit/, so excuse me if this is something you guys have some explanation for already. Please just tell me there's a realistic explanation for this and that what happened is common. I'm fucking terrified. Get home from work. It's almost midnight. When the door opens, the home security